StarCraft II: Legacy of the Void is the third iteration of the popular real-time strategy game StarCraft II, a game known for its highly competitive ranked ladder and fast-paced gameplay. Given how old the StarCraft franchise is at this point, I imagine most people have already made up their mind. You have either looked into it and realized that it is not the game or it's not the genre for you, or you have purchased one of the various iterations and have been hooked, bounced off, or both. In writing this review, I have realized that my previous experience with StarCraft has made it so that I can only speak to a certain audience. And that audience is not that of the new players, but players that have burned out or made an attempt to play StarCraft II but bounced off because of the game's difficulty to control and brutality of solo matchmaking. That's what I did. Having played Brood War offline as a child, I gave Wings of Liberty a chance when it released. I played 200 games of Wings of Liberty. I climbed from silver to gold almost entirely by being a 4-gating Protoss scrub. Not that I wanted to be a 4-gating Protoss scrub, it was just a simple enough build that even I could pull it off. When I stopped progressing because of my own nervousness and the inability to reach a higher APM with those nerves, I stopped playing StarCraft and merely watched. Sure, there was a joy to winning a game of StarCraft, but the act of playing itself was intensely stressful thanks to the abundance of negative feedback in the game from supply blocking and the ever-increasing mineral bank I seemed to accrue. I wasn't even planning on purchasing Legacy of the Void until a friend of mine asked me if I was interested, particularly in order to play the game's Archon mode. StarCraft II: Legacy of the Void is not going to fundamentally change how you feel about the StarCraft brand of RTS, or the RTS genre as a whole. It is a tweaking of the delicate state of balance, and it ups the pace of the early game. But, more importantly to me, it introduces a couple of ways for people to engage with the beautiful game that is StarCraft II. These ways are Archon mode, a ranked and unranked competitive multiplayer mode that allows for 2 players to share control of a single base, and a co-op mode, which allows friends to engage in challenging missions together while progressing a hero character to unlock absurd upgrades that would never be allowed in the competitive modes. As far as the 1v1 competitive multiplayer goes, I am not the level of person who could tell you if the changes made are for the better or for the worse in terms of balance, but the changes are at the very least interesting, and I've been having a lot of fun playing with them. The core loop of ranked play is largely untouched. The solo matchmaking system still ensures that you lose about 50% of your games to see if you're getting better, which can make it difficult for players to understand that they're progressing because their win-loss rate in ranked will not reflect it, and promotions are few and far between. This means that I still tend not to play ranked 1v1, though I will hop into the unranked hopper to try builds versus real people. So then, what's so special about Archon mode? Archon mode is a new mode to Legacy of the Void that allows teams of 2 to play StarCraft as a single unit. This isn't 2v2, where you have your base and your units, which are separate from your buddy's base and your buddy's units. As an Archon, you and your ally share one single base and share control of every single unit in that base. At first glance, I wouldn't blame you for thinking that this is a throwaway mode from Blizzard, made for zaniness' sake. But it has enabled me to play StarCraft and enjoy my time with competitive ranked without being reduced to a quivering mess for the first time. Now up front, let me acknowledge that it's not the easiest thing to find an Archon buddy. StarCraft II moves fast, so you'll want to have your buddy on some sort of vocal chat client, and not everybody gets to do everything in Archon. For example, the way that I divide labor is I am in charge of macro and my friend is in charge of micro. When we don't communicate that we're touching in each other's fields, things tend to go sour. The macro-micro division is very basic, and it's certainly not the only way to play Archon mode. And I would imagine that as the 2 halves of the Archon get better, the responsibility distribution becomes further complicated. Right now, I can barely keep up with macro. I try to find time to look at the opposing army composition, but assisting in the fight is a little bit outside of my range. Yet, I can see that soon I'll be able to help in these skirmishes, and that's exciting. Archon mode opens up a space for me to be atrocious at StarCraft and still be able to play out a respectable game by 1v1 standards. For the first time in my StarCraft career, I am getting to choose the build that I am executing based on the map, based on the race, based on the opposing tech. The micro half of my Archon feeds me information about what he thinks he needs, and I do my best to fulfill that need. Having spent years watching competitive StarCraft 2, I have an understanding of what a Terran needs to do versus a 2-base Roach all-in. But until Archon mode, I found myself unable to act on this knowledge in an efficient way. In Archon mode, I can execute builds that revolve around early game harass, because I can dedicate the other half of my Archon's full attention to those units. The Reaper, the Hellion, the Banshee, they were all units that I simply could not make effective use of without a second set of hands. I have gone from playing one aggressive build every single game because it allowed me to move one single ball of units, to playing out longer, more intricate matches with meaningful scouting, tech switches, and micro-intensive unit compositions. One of the side effects of Archon mode is also that I have been improving faster. Because I have someone there with me, they're critiquing my play, and I'm getting better at a pace much faster than I was managing through day 9 dailies back in Wings of Liberty. I always have someone to critique my play who is invested in how well I perform, because it impacts how well they perform. Someone wrote that mastery is achieved after 10,000 hours, but only 10,000 hours with constant feedback. In Archon mode, I get that feedback every match, because I have someone there with me. They tell me their opinions, they verify what worked and what didn't work, and we move forward. Even if I'm not moving up through the ranks very quickly, I still have someone to tell me that I'm doing better. Even if my win-loss does not reflect that, they can say, I had more units, or we got the composition right, or you microed like a god. Separate from Archon mode, there is also a co-op mode, which came with Legacy of the Void, and it too deserves some attention. It is a 2v AI mode that pits you and a buddy, though there is built-in matchmaking for this mode, against a scenario which has you constantly juggling multiple threats and objectives. The missions are very well put together, though there are very few of them, and they quickly begin to repeat. There are various difficulties which allow each level to remain challenging even as you get the hang of it, and there are 6 different commanders you can play as. These commanders are the real draw of the co-op missions. You select one of 6 characters from StarCraft lore to play as. This will impact many things. It will impact the race you spawn as, the units you can build and the units you cannot build, as well as it'll define which game-breaking special abilities you will have access to, which normally are secluded to the single-player campaign. These characters have a meta level, which increases in between missions based on your success. Leveling up unlocks more units and special abilities for them to use. With high-level commanders, you begin to break the rules of StarCraft 2. The difficulty increases in an attempt to match those capabilities. For those who need progression in their StarCraft 2, but playing against people stresses you out, this is a mode that was made for you. However, I'm not sure that there's enough content to sustain or appease you just in this mode alone. Right now, it is a satisfying aside, though I certainly wouldn't purchase the game just for it. That being said, Blizzard has indicated that they intend to expand the number of missions and increase the number of commanders in the future, so there is hope that this mode will become quite meaty. There's also a single-player campaign, but I have no interest in playing it, so all I can do is repeat what I've heard. It seems that it's a real dumb story that has been tied to a series of very well-made campaign missions which successfully mix up the gameplay in meaningful and entertaining ways. Perhaps, if you care to see the end of the StarCraft lore, which started in SC2, the campaign combined with the co-op comes together to create a palatable amount of content for the price. In summation, this installment of StarCraft 2 I think is crazy, because they have finally made an appeal to the more casual player, something I thought that Blizzard would never do with this franchise. At the same time, this expansion is pushing the casual audience away, with a slew of new micro-intensive units like the Ravager, the Disruptor, and the Cyclone. But they're providing the casual audience better means of interacting with that content in the form of Archon mode and co-op. Blizzard has established a solid base platform, and have indicated that they intend to expand upon this base. Admittedly, the casual content requires that you have a buddy to really have a blast with it, so that will be a barrier to some people. But if StarCraft is a game that you have always wanted to play, there has never been a better time to grab a friend and try to get good.